Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is Veronica Gutierrez, author of the new novel As You Look, a Yolanda Avila mystery. Veronica, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, if someone listening hasn't yet heard about your debut novel, As You Look, how would you describe the novel?
It's a mystery novel. It's a detective novel, and it features a detective who's dealing with the intersection of grief and guilt and nascent psychic tendencies, which she rejects because she's a detective and should focus on facts, that type of thing. And it progresses and deals with some crime solving that she has to do, and also with her circle of friends and family.
And do you remember the original idea or impetus that led you to write As You Look?
Oh, goodness. It must have been quite a while ago when I was working with the city of Los Angeles. I was working for a local elected official. And you come across a lot of interesting things then. And I've always loved mystery novels. So the idea of writing my own probably came up back in the early 90s or so. But I didn't actually get to it until after I retired early, in 2017 or so.
And I'm curious, do you think that there's a lot of yourself in your character, Yolanda?
I think there might be. I think Yolanda is a composite of various people. So it's not all me, even though it's written in the first person. And I think her wife, Sydney, is also a composite character, and parts of me are in her as well as in some of the other characters. But I think it's fair to say that her experience is similar to mine growing up in the Boyle Heights neighborhood of Los Angeles.
And I'm curious, were there crime writers or other writers that inspired you as you were thinking about writing As You Look and as you were writing As You Look?
Oh, sure. Sarah Paretsky, the V.I. Warshawski series that she writes based in Chicago, I've always loved. Kara Black's Aimé Leduc series based in Paris is also something that I just gobbled up. And I really love the way that they made the cities a part of the story, almost another character in the stories. And that's part of what I tried to do with this immigrant neighborhood in Los Angeles.
And so I'm curious, you said that you originally had the idea in the early 90s. Can you kind of walk us through your writing journey when, as you said, after you retired early, when you sat down, what was it like to finally sit down and start writing the novel?
Oh, it was wonderful. I did have the idea, but, I had a very busy job. I've had several very busy jobs. I did a stint as a civil rights litigator as well. And that was the first time I was actually, in a professional way, able just to focus on writing. And I absolutely loved it and wanted to get back to it. I ended up following all that up with some nonprofit work, some corporate work, and was fortunate to be able to retire early, at which time I read as much as I could, and then thought, I need to put this down on paper. I had so much of it in my head, and a lot of serendipitous things happened. I came across a book by Lisa Krohn called Story Genius, which talks a little bit about the psychology of story and our psychological need for story as human beings, and a little bit about how to pull people into a story. And then she had a workshop and worked with Jenny Nash over at Author Accelerator, where she trains book coaches and offers workshops for writers with her book coaches. And I took advantage of that, and it just kind of took off after that. They really helped me pull the story together even more. The concepts that they offered really helped me solidify the story and get it done about within a year, I would say. Then I looked for agents, sent the manuscript off, got positive feedback, but no bites. And then I sent it to the publisher, Bella Books. I'd read a lot of books that that they publish, and they picked it up, for which I'm very grateful. They've been extremely supportive.
That's great. And so what was the writing process like? I mean, you said that, when you were working with Jenny Nash and others, did you outline the novel extensively before you sat down to write it? What was that like for you?
And so this is what was interesting. It was a lot of fun, first of all. I followed the advice in Story Genius, Lisa Krone's book first, which had you write the backstory, not even the actual story, but the backstory for the book of your main character. And then the first chapter, then what she calls the aha moment somewhere in the middle, and then the last chapter, so that you have an idea of where your story is going, and it helps you develop a blueprint. And that was a lot of fun. Then Jenny Nash has this concept of the two-tiered outline. It's a 2-page, no more than 2 pages. She's very strict about it. She calls it the inside outline now. And it helps you develop both the plot and the character development simultaneously, so that your story is moving forward. And I don't know, I think I fall in between the outliner and the pantser, if you will. But I went ahead with a short outline and kept it very flexible. And in the end, I actually used the outline to help me keep track of the story. So I would write, and then I would fill in the outline a little bit, make sure that I was developing it, if you will. And it helped me, like I said, keep track of what was happening in the story, and ultimately really helped me write a synopsis for it when it came time to do that. So I guess what I've done is I've written the story from a rough outline, and then bolstered up the outline based on what I was writing. And the outline also helped me look for holes in it that I needed to fill.
Hey, this is Jeff from the Reading and Writing Podcast. Do you know what I love when I'm reading a great new book? A cup of tea. It's such a fun ritual. Settling down with a cup of tea and a new novel that I'm excited to read. Why not treat yourself to a cup of Plum Deluxe teas? Every loose leaf tea is hand blended, fresh, using only the best ingredients. From bold black teas to relaxing herbal blends, incredible dessert teas, or fun floral flavors, there's a delicious tea waiting for you. And I'm not making this up. They have a flavor of tea called Reading Nook Blend Black Tea. It's a tea that pairs perfectly with reading, writing, and relaxing. Plum Deluxe is a family-owned business, and they have one of the best selections of delicious, flavorful herbal teas, as well as bold black tea flavors. Visit plumdeluxe.com/listen and use the promo code RWP to save 12% on your first order. Tea also makes a great gift. That's plumdeluxe.com/listen and use the promo code RWP. There's nothing better than enjoying a great cup of tea with a good book. And now you can get your great tea from plumdeluxe.com.
Target has Laundry Day covered because they offer a great selection of concentrated Tide Pods to help with all your laundry needs. Tide Pods clean, freshen, and help rejuvenate your clothes with odor fighters and stain removers. Did you know Tide Pods clean better than the leading liquid bargain detergent? Tide Pods are powerful enough to make your whites white and your brights bright, even in cold water. Just toss in 1 Tide Pod for small loads, 2 for medium, 3 for large. It's that easy. For great value and convenient pickup options, get Tide Pods today at Target.
That's great. Well, are you working on another Yolanda Avila novel now?
Well, I'm starting to work on one. It will be another one. It'll be based in the same neighborhood, and I'm doing some research on it now. And that's a tremendous amount of fun. I don't have a title for it yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to writing crime fiction, you're also interested in making cocktails, and you published a book, My Little Black Cocktail Book. How did you get interested in making cocktails?
Yes, I did. I It's an interesting story. My wife and I worked for the same company, and both worked in San Francisco for a while, even though it's an LA-based company. And we met while I was working up there. I ended up coming back to Los Angeles, and she ended up being transferred up there. So we've always had a San Francisco connection. And I'd go up there on weekends, and she would arrange for a fancy meal and all. And after a while, I thought, I don't really want to eat anything heavy. I just want to go somewhere, have a drink and an appetizer, and then maybe go somewhere else and have a drink and an appetizer. So she curated all of these visits to different bars in San Francisco, some of the speakeasies as well. And the bartenders were extraordinarily generous with their recipes. I just love talking to them. And at the same time, I was trying to figure out how I was going to write a book eventually. And I had a very good friend, a chiropractor in San Francisco, Dr. Joella Castillo, who recommended trying self-publishing. And to learn that process, I went ahead and developed my little black cocktail book, which is a journal for cocktail recipes. So it's a blank book with a lot of prompts that help you enter recipes for different cocktails, which is a lot better than writing them on a cocktail napkin. So that's how that came about.
That's great. Well, what's your latest favorite cocktail? Can you give us a little?
Sure. I think my favorite right now is probably the Boulevardier, or a riff on the Boulevardier. The Boulevardier is actually a riff on the Negroni, where the Negroni is equal parts gin and sweet vermouth and Campari. The Boulevardier substitutes bourbon for the gin, and I don't do mine in quite equal parts. To reduce some of the bitterness of the Campari, I do half an ounce of that, a full ounce of the sweet vermouth, Antica Formula sweet vermouth. And right now, my favorite bourbon to use an ounce and a half of is the Four Roses small batch. So that's
great.
Drink.
That sounds good.
It's delicious.
Well, given your experience with your first novel, what writing advice would you offer for those who are working on their own stories and novels?
Probably to just get to it. And as you develop your concept, make sure that you are trying to keep it organized as well. I cannot overemphasize the need to work through a process that is good for you, that resonates with you. Some people really hate doing the long outlines, and we can't help but not want to do that because we want to get to the writing sometimes. But following Jenny Nash's inside outline is something that I would advise. The other thing would be getting a book coach. And the primary reason for that is that unlike an editor who will, give you feedback and, redline your book and all, it's great. But a book coach will actually help talk you through developing the story and becomes a bit of a partner with you. So I would recommend trying to get your story down a little bit, the concepts down, maybe even some of the writing down, and then look for a book coach to help you work through it.
That's great. Well, what novels have you read recently that you enjoyed?
I've been reading so much too. Reina Grande's A Ballad of Love and Glory. It's great historical fiction about the Mexican-American War, and was lovely to read. I'm currently reading Naomi Hirahara's Clark and Division, which is a mystery set in Chicago after the Japanese internment. I'm doing some research with Japanese characters because I want to have a Japanese character in my second novel, and so I've also read her Life After Manzanar, which is a nonfiction book about what so many Japanese went through. Japanese Americans also went through with the internment and the release. And the Boyle Heights neighborhood in Los Angeles is one place where there were a lot of Japanese families who were removed right at the beginning of World War II. some of whom returned, some of whom did not have possession, some of whom had friends who held on to things for them, and that type of thing. So that will be one of the characters in my book who has experienced something similar.
Wow. Well, where can people find you online if they'd like to learn more about you and your novel As You Look?
Well, I have a website. It's at veronicagutierrez.com. Should be easy to find. And I have other links there, and they can learn a little bit more about the neighborhood and the book.
That's great. Well, again, we've been speaking with Veronica Gutierrez, author of the new novel As You Look, a Yolanda Avila mystery. The novel is available now, so go buy a copy. And Veronica, thanks for doing this interview.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Target has Laundry Day covered because they offer a great selection of concentrated Tide Pods to help with all your laundry needs. Tide Pods clean, freshen, and help rejuvenate your clothes with odor fighters and stain removers. Did you know Tide Pods clean better than the leading liquid bargain detergent? Tide Pods are powerful enough to make your whites white and your brights bright, even in cold water. Just toss in 1 Tide Pod for small loads, 2 for medium, 3 for large. It's that easy. For great value and convenient pickup options, get Tide Pods today at Target.
Target sabe que tú siempre encuentras el motivo para juntar a toda la familia. Cada platillo está hecho con amor. Y todos los bailes son una celebración que te conectan con tus antepasados. Cada instante es más de lo que parece. Encuentra todo para hacer cualquier momento aún más grande con Target. Más que un momento, construyamos el futuro juntos. Visita target.com/más que para apoyar las marcas que son de y para nosotros.